Hello and welcome to IP Study video lectures. Today we are going to discuss chapter number 3 of grade 7 social science. The chapter name is the Delhi Sultanate. Now the Delhi Sultanate is a very important time period in medieval history of India. It is a time period between 1206 CE to 1526 CE. And in this time period we see that there are 5 different dynasties that rule over northern India. Most of them rule over northern India, but some of them also rule some parts of southern India. So now let us discuss about these dynasties. It all starts from the story of Muhammad Ghori. We discussed about him in our previous chapter. We know that he was the king of Ghor region of Afghanistan who came to plunder India many times. Right? The mission was to come to India, loot India and take the resources back to his native place. We also read how Prithvi Raj Chauhan was able to defeat him in the first battle of Tehran in the year 1191. Right? But in the following year we see that Muhammad Ghori came back and this time he was able to defeat Prithvi Raj Chauhan. Not only Prithvi Raj Chauhan, he was also able to defeat the ruler of Kanauj, Jai Chand, and this is how we see that the rule of Rajput dynasty came to an end. This was a very important change in the social structure because it was for the first time that we see that there was an emergence of Muslim empire. Ghori did not rule over India by himself. He handed the control over the region to Qutbuddin Aibak. Now Qutbuddin Aibak is the governor that he appoints to take control over the territories which have been captured in India. And this is how we see the emergence of slave dynasty, because Qutbuddin Aibak is the slave of Muhammad Ghori, and that is why we see this dynasty is known as the slave dynasty. Now Qutbuddin Aibak ruled for a very short time period, about 4 years between 1206 to 1210 CE. In this time period, one of the most important accomplishments that we associate with him is the construction of Qutub Minar. Now Qutub Minar has been made in the memory of Qutbuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki, who was a Sufi saint. Now during the time of Qutbuddin Aibak, this structure was not completed. In fact, it was his son-in-law and the future ruler Iltutmish under whose time we see that the construction was completed. As we said, he ruled only for a very short period of time. In 1210 CE, we see that Qutbuddin Aibak passes away. He dies in an accident while playing polo. So now let us move to Now Iltutmish is considered as the true ruler of the slave dynasty because he was the one who ruled for a longer period of time. We see almost 25 years of time period. He was also able to defend the territory against the Mongol invasion. Now Genghis Khan is one name in history who is associated with great brutality. The way he attacked many parts of the world, we see he did that with great brutality, but Iltutmish and his army was able to protect the borders from his invasion. So that is one of his achievements. Also, he was able to expand the empire. He defeated many Rajput kings in Ranthambore, Ujjain, Malwa, Gwalior, and even some regions of Bengal and Bihar he was able to capture. So we see that he was an efficient ruler, efficient administrator who was able to take control of many places and expand his kingdom during his time. Now he did not find his sons to be very capable of taking over his empire, and that is why he preferred Razia Sultan to become the next queen to take the throne. Now Razia Sultan was very brave. All the documents that we have about her, that she was very skilled, whether it was in hunting, whether it was fighting the wars. She was a very brave and efficient ruler. But the nobles were not happy with her rule. We can understand there is some angle of you can say bias against one gender, where nobles were not able to accept that a woman ruler could rule over them. Now, after the death of Razia Sultan, this was a very chaotic time, because different brothers of Razia Sultan and other people in the kingdom wanted to become the king, and they were fighting among themselves. We eventually see that with the help of nobles, Nasiruddin Mahmud comes to power. But he is a very weak ruler. He is mostly controlled by the nobles, right? So that is why he is described as a puppet ruler. Now, Ghiyasuddin Balban is considered as the most powerful king of the slave dynasty. He was able to control the invasion from the Mongols, who tried to take the region away from him. And even during the time of Nasiruddin's reign, we see that the Mongols had continued attacking the region, but that Mongol invasion was avoided by Ghiyasuddin Balban. Ghiyasuddin Balban also faced attacks from the governor of Bengal, Tughraq Khan, but he was able to protect his empire against this attack as well. Now, Ghiyasuddin Balban considered himself as the deputy of God, Naibe Khudai. This is why he also introduced systems such as Sajda and Paibos. Now, what are these systems? If we see, Sajda means touching the ground with your face over the ground to show respect to the emperor, and Paibos means kissing the foot of the sultan. So these practices were introduced under his time period because he just wanted to show his dominance over his people. Navroz was a festival that was started by him in India. Now, Navroz, as we know, is a festival celebrated by followers of Zoroastrianism religion all over the world, and some Parsis also lived in India. So for them, he started the celebration of the Navroz festival. We see that after Balban, there were some successes, but because they were weak, Jalaluddin Khalji was able to defeat them, and this is how we see that the slave dynasty came to an end. After the slave dynasty, we see the emergence of the Khalji dynasty. As we discussed, Jalaluddin Khalji was the first sultan of the Khalji dynasty. Now, Jalaluddin Khilji was able to take control of some regions like Mandawar and Jain, but he was not able to take control of the Charmanha's capital at Ranthambore. And before he could succeed his military campaigns, he was killed by his nephew Alauddin Khalji. Now, Alauddin Khalji is considered one of the most important rulers of the Delhi Sultanate. He launched many campaigns to cover different parts of northern India. He was able to defeat Raja Ratan Singh, the king of Chittor. He also captured regions such as Malwa, Ujjain, Mandu and others. He even tried to control Bengal, but he failed in that regard. We also see that he wanted to capture regions of South India, and for this he employed Malik Kafur, who was a very loyal general to him. So many large parts of South India were also covered by him. When Malik Kafur defeated different kings of South India, he received a lot of rewards in return. This is how we see that back in North India, Khalji Empire was able to rule for a very long time and in a very efficient manner. Now let us discuss about the administration of Alauddin Khalji. We consider him as a very able administrator who was able to control the nobles. Why nobles needed to be controlled? Because nobles were the influential people in the empire, and if the nobles were not under control of the king, we see that they were able to attack the king at many times. They were able to push another person to become the king. That is why it was always important for the different sultans to make sure that the nobles are under his control. So we see many reforms were targeted in this manner only. the land, property, and the gifts, the iktas, the religious endowments were taken away from the nobles. The large marriage parties, social gatherings were also restricted. There was an efficient spy system to take control over to keep an eye over the nobles. Excess of money was also taken away by them. As far as the people's needs were concerned, for them he made drinking in public illegal. He also made sure that the prices of essential items were kept low. There were officers to check this in his empire. The land revenue for the land was also fixed in the Doab region, that is the region between Ganga and Yamuna rivers. 1/2 of the total produce was taken by the king. The revenue records were also kept up to date. So we see that in this manner he was able to have good revenue from the kingdom, which he used to expand his empire. After the death of Alauddin Khilji, we also see that his dynasty came to an end and it was replaced by the Tughlaq dynasty. Now, the Tughlaq dynasty was more stable than the Khilji dynasty, in the sense that it was able to rule for almost 100 years. We see that there are two important kings, important sultans of this time period. One was Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. Now, Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq was the founder of the Tughlaq dynasty. He ruled between 1320 to 1324, so almost 4 years. But during this time period, he was able to take control of Warangal region as well as the Bengal region. It was a great accomplishment, because we see that many sultans before him wanted to take control of Bengal, but they were unable to do so. Now, his son Muhammad bin Tughlaq ruled between 1324 to 1351, so very long time period. Now, his time period is considered very interesting, because yes, he was able to expand his empire, but there were several decisions that were taken by him which are considered, you can say, controversial or unpopular among the masses. So what are these things? We will discuss in detail. So first of all, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, considered as one of the most remarkable rulers of the dynasty. He was able to expand the empire from Peshawar in the north to Madurai in the south. So you can imagine the huge extent of his empire. Also from Sindh in the west to Assam in the east. So his empire was really very large, but there were some administrative blunders which we discussed earlier that led to the decline of the empire. Now, what were these? First of all, taxation in the Doabs. Doab is the region between Ganga and Yamuna, as we discussed before. It is considered as a very fertile region, but during this time period, we see that there was crop failure. And even though there was crop failure due to lack of rain, he increased the taxes during this time period. So you can see the people, the subjects that were there in his kingdom were not happy with this decision of his. Apart from this, transfer of capital. Now, Muhammad bin Tughlaq was also very ambitious, and that is why he shifted his capital from Delhi to Devagari in the Deccan region. He called this Daulatabad. The problem with this transfer of capital was, from Delhi to Daulatabad, the region is about 1500 kilometers. During that time period, it was a huge distance. Many people who were with him, who wanted to be transported from Delhi to Daulatabad, they died on the journey. And the people who reached the place were also homesick, right? So there was a huge difference in the conditions that you can find, the weather conditions and other cultural differences between Delhi to Daulatabad, and that is why people could not survive and they did not want to be there, right? But he was a very ambitious person. He wanted to have a better control of South India, capture more regions in South India. That is why he wanted to shift this capital. But it came out to be a blunderous decision. Another blunder was token currency. Now, what is token currency? Token currency simply means that the amount that is printed on the coin is more than the cost of making that coin. So why he introduced token currency? Because earlier there were gold and silver coins, and some people used to melt those gold and silver coins, and the amount of that gold and silver was more than the amount printed on the coins, right? So it was a problem. He identified that problem, but he was not able to carry this policy very well. Now he made copper coins where it is considered as token currency, because the amount of copper used to make that coin is less than the money that is printed on the coin, right? This is how the modern money is also functions, because the amount of 500 rupee note, paper note, is not the cost of making that paper note, right? So we also have token currency in the modern times, but in modern times it is acceptable. But during this time period, the Indians, the people who lived in that region, were not able to accept this change, and that is why we see that token currency failed as an idea. His plans of conquest were also questionable. He wanted to conquer regions of Persia and China. He made preparations for about a year, but unfortunately he had to give up this project, which almost emptied the royal treasury. So he wanted to plan to control different regions, not just of India but also outside India, but the amount which was spent in just the planning of this action was too much. It led to economic failures of the empire. So even if we see that as a ruler he was of very high morals, he did a lot for he wanted to fix a lot of things in his kingdom. He also patronized art and music, but we see that as an administrator he was perhaps too ambitious, maybe too far ahead of his time, if we take example of token currency, and that is why he failed in that regard. Now Muhammad bin Tughlaq was replaced by his cousin Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Now Firoz Shah Tughlaq had a lot of challenges, because we see that by the end of Muhammad bin Tughlaq's rule, there were so many problems that the empire was facing. So he immediately wanted to please the nobles, the army and the Muslim priest. How did he do that? For the nobles, he made the Iqta and the land rights hereditary, which simply means that the zamindar, the nobles, were in a hereditary position, so the son of a noble will also become a noble and have those rights over the land from where they were getting their revenues. And to please the ulamas, he introduced the jizya tax. Now jizya is a special tax on the non-Muslims. It has been a very controversial subject in Indian history, if we say, because there were many Muslim rulers who imposed the jizya tax. It goes against the secular principle if we talk in the modern times. So the rulers who imposed this tax against the non-Muslims was always considered controversial. Firoz Shah Tughlaq also did many activities for the welfare of people. This including digging up wells and irrigation canals. He also made hospitals for the treatment of the poor, right? But despite all these efforts, we see that by this time the region of Delhi Sultanate was actually becoming less and less. We see that more empires, more regional empires were rising, and Delhi Sultanate was losing its territory. One of the external reasons behind the decline of Delhi Sultanate and the Tughlaqs here was Taimur's invasion. Now Taimur was a Mongolian ruler. We discussed how different Mongolian rulers came and invaded India. They attacked the people, they took over the wealth, and with this wealth they decorated their own kingdom. So his kingdom was Samarkand. He took the wealth and made beautiful mosque in his kingdom by plundering and looting the people of the Delhi Sultanate. So now let us discuss about the first ruler of the Sayyid dynasty, Khizar Khan. Now Khizar Khan was actually the governor of Multan under Firoz Shah Tughlaq. But when Timur came to India, he joined hands with him. And because Timur was impressed by him, so while leaving India, he appointed him as the governor of Multan, Lahore and Dipalpur. But we also see that the Subadars of Punjab, of Batinda and Doab region were not happy with him. They broke out in revolt against him. And that is why we see that Khizar Khan was not able to establish a very stable kingdom. Now Mubarak Shah, the son of Khizar Khan, was a very efficient ruler. He wanted to take disciplinary actions against the Jagirdars and nobles so that he could take in charge of the revenue that is collected from the land. But because he went against the interest of the Jagirdars, these nobles, they made it difficult for him to rule over the kingdom. The Jagirdars considered this property as their own property, and this is why we see that there is a conflict between the nobility and the king. Now by the time of Muhammad Shah and Alauddin Alam Shah, we see that Sayyid dynasty had become very weak. If you look at the region that Muhammad Shah was able to control, it was only for 30 miles, and the rest of the region was controlled by the nobles. And by the time of Alauddin Alam Shah, we see that he was not able to defend his empire against Behlul Lodi, and that is why we see that the Sayyid dynasty came to an end. Now let us discuss about the Lodi dynasty, which is the last of the Delhi Sultanate dynasties. The founder was Behlul Lodi, who was an Afghan ruler. He had spent a lot of time of his life fighting against the Sharki dynasty, but he was able to defeat it. He placed his eldest son Barbak as to the throne of Jaunpur, whereas Sikandar Lodi actually succeeded him in taking over the region. Now Sikandar Lodi is considered as the greatest of the kings of Lodi dynasty. He established the city of Agra, which he made the headquarters of his army. He was an able administrator. He did many welfare activities for his people. Trade was also promoted during this time period, and many roads were constructed. One of the interesting things about his time period is how the tombs were built in gardens. It was an architectural style which even Mughals copied during this time period. A tomb is basically a place where the dead body of a famous person, the ruler or some saint is there, and a tomb is built upon it. It was built in areas which had gardens. Even today we see Humayun tomb and some other tombs in Delhi and regions around it, where this architecture style was popularized by him. Now Ibrahim Lodi was the last of the rulers of Delhi Sultanates, and he was not popular among his masses unlike his predecessors, and that was because he was ill-tempered and there was no sympathy that was shown towards his subjects, which is why he lost his popularity. His uncle Alam Khan actually invited Babur from Afghanistan to invade over India, and we see that Babur defeated Ibrahim Lodi, and after this defeat in 1526 we see that the time of Delhi Sultanate ended and a new chapter in Indian history, the Mughal period, started. Now let us move to the last topic of this chapter, and that is administration under the different sultans of Delhi. So there were different dynasties that ruled, but there were some common features of these dynasties. That is what we are going to discuss here. First of all, the position of the sultan had become the most important in the empire. If you remember, Sajda was introduced during this time period where people were saluting to the king by putting their face to the ground, and even Paibas was introduced where they were kissing the feet of the sultan. So these things show that the Sultan had become so important and people used to even worship him like a god. So that is one thing that we see during this time period. And the king was taking control of the court as well as the army. So in a democratic country like India today, we see that there is a clear distinction between the legislative, executive, judiciary, different powers of the government. But here the king was all powerful. He was the one who was dispatching justice. He was taking lead of the military campaigns. He was in charge of the administration and everything. Of course, people used to work under him, but the final say was of the Sultan. If you look at the courts were on a raised platform. So that also says something about how the kings looked at themselves. They used to sit at a higher platform because they felt they were superior, almost divine in nature. Then nobility and Ikta system. Now we discussed earlier how nobles were becoming important and they needed to be checked. Now what was the Ikta system? Basically, the nobles were not given proper salaries, but they were given the Iktas. Iktas were the region from where the revenues were collected. And that is why these nobles were known as Iktadars, and the system is known as the Ikta system. So they had to collect the revenue from the region that was given to them, the Ikta region, and this revenue they will share with the king. And that is why they had to maintain proper records of what revenue was collected by them. If we see that some rulers like Balban, Alauddin Khalji and Sikandar Lodi were able to keep the nobles in check, but at many times we saw that different rulers were overthrown because the nobles disapproved of them or were not happy with them. So we can conclude that during the time of the Delhi Sultanate, it was difficult for any king and any dynasty to have full control over the nobility. People were also unhappy with the kings because we see that the kings regarded themselves in a very high manner. They could not meet the expectations of their own people. This is why we see that when Mughal Empire comes to India, it is able to rule for a longer period of time. Even when Britishers come, it's people coming from outside the country, but they have better administration. They are able to manipulate the people in the better manner, we can say, which Delhi Sultanate was not able to do. And this is why we see that 5 different dynasties rule over a period of 350 years, and none of it is able to rule for a very long period of time. So this is how we end this chapter. We will meet again in our next video lecture. Thank you so much for watching this video.